Let's be honest. For decades, we've seen Wolverine as the unstoppable, unkillable beast of the X-Men, the perfect soldier. He's the best there is at what he does, and you know the rest. It's a classic line, one that has defined him as Marvel's premier anti-hero. But what if that whole image is a lie? What if the very things that make him seem so powerful are actually his most critical weaknesses? What if the guy we see as a tough, brooding loner is just a deeply broken person, crippled by flaws that go way beyond a simple bad attitude? Today, we read tearing down the myth and exposing the 10 critical flaws in Marvel as favorite mutant that some writers might prefer you didn't think about. Number 10. Vulnerability to specific threats. Kicking off our list at number 10 is a flaw that brings the unkillable mutant crashing right back down to Earth. He's not actually unkillable. While his healing factor is legendary, it has some very specific and surprisingly mundane limitations. A big one? Drowning. His incredibly dense adamantium skeleton makes swimming a near impossible task. If he's submerged, his healing factor can enter a torturous, losing battle. His lungs try to heal from the water damage, only to be immediately flooded again. It's a grim loophole that doesn't require a supervillain, just a deep body of water. Beyond that, his powers are not absolute, and clever enemies have found ways to hit him where it hurts. Attacks that overwhelm his healing factor with immense, sustained damage can work. Special materials like carbonadium can slow his healing abilities, which Deadpool once took advantage of with a carbonadium sword in a non-canonical story. Even being encased in adamantium, the very metal that makes him so durable, led to his death in one storyline by suffocating him. For a man famous for surviving nuclear blasts, it's humbling to know that some of his greatest threats are surprisingly low-tech. Number 9. Sensory overload. Wolverine's animal keen senses are a massive advantage in a fight, letting him track enemies and detect threats long before anyone else. But this strength is also a hidden vulnerability. Like a finely tuned instrument, his senses can be overwhelmed, turning a powerful tool into a crippling liability. Powerful sonic attacks or overwhelming smells can disorient him, leaving him wide open. This isn't just a theory either. In a heartbreaking storyline, this exact flaw was exploited in the cruelest way possible. Enemies used the scent of his long-lost mother, a source of immense unresolved trauma, to mentally paralyze him. In that moment, surrounded by the scent, Logan confessed he felt little and weak. His incredible senses turned against him to trigger a deep psychological vulnerability that no healing factor could ever fix. It just proves that his senses are a direct line to his psyche, and a clever opponent doesn't need to land a punch if they can cripple him with the ghost of a memory. Number 8. The adamantium skeleton. Coming in at number 8 is Wolverine's most defining feature, his adamantium skeleton. It gives him unbreakable bones and turns his claws into deadly weapons. But it's a gift that came at a horrifying price, and it remains one of his biggest weaknesses. The bonding process itself was an act of torture that nearly killed him, a trauma that haunts him to this day. More practically, it's a constant drain on his system. The metal is basically a foreign substance, a poison that his healing factor is forced to constantly fight day in and day out. In fact, after Magneto brutally ripped the adamantium from his body, it was revealed his healing factor was far more powerful than anyone knew, since it was no longer being suppressed by the constant fight against metal poisoning. And of course, there's the most obvious flaw. It makes him a living puppet for any villain with magnetic powers. Magneto has used Logan's own skeleton against him time and time again, turning his greatest weapon into a cage and reminding him that his indestructibility is conditional. Number 7. A poor role model at number 7. We're moving from physical flaws to personal ones. For a man who has spent so much time as a mentor at the Xavier Institute, Wolverine is a shockingly poor role model. His entire persona is built on being anti-authority, filled with rage, and having a lone wolf mentality, the exact opposite of the values the X-Men try to instill in their students. He encouraged rebellious behavior, openly disrespects team leaders like Cyclops, and often solves problems with brutal, lethal force. This isn't just a bad look. It actively endangers the very students he's supposed to be protecting. How can you teach young mutants to control their powers and fit into society when you so often lose control yourself? While some writers frame his gruff mentorship as tough love, the reality is that his methods are often hypocritical. He preaches teamwork while constantly going rogue, and he scolds others for violence while being one of the most prolific killers in the Marvel Universe. He sets a terrible example for kids who are already struggling, teaching them that lashing out and going it alone are valid options. Number 6. Selfishness and an anti-authority streak. Connected to that last point is our sixth flaw, his profound selfishness. Wolverine's history is littered with him abandoning the X-Men to chase personal quests. Whether it's a clue about his past or a private vendetta, Logan has a habit of putting his own needs above the team's. This makes him an incredibly unreliable teammate. His blatant disrespect for authority, especially his longtime rival Cyclops, often shreds mission protocols and creates dangerous friction in the field. This isn't just a simple personality clash. His lone wolf act is often just a cover for doing whatever he wants, no matter the consequences for everyone else. While fans might love that rebellious spirit, let's be real. In any team setting, he'd be a massive liability. His refusal to follow orders and his habit of going off mission have, time and again, put the entire team and the world they're trying to save at greater risk. This isn't heroic rebellion. It's a deep-seated character flaw that makes him a wild card in the worst way. Number 5. The Berserker rage cracking our top 5 is Wolverine's most infamous and dangerous flaw, his Berserker rage. When he's pushed too far, Logan can lose all control and become a feral killing machine that attacks both friend and foe. This isn't a superpower. It's a catastrophic failure of his mental state, a total loss of his humanity. While it can make him a devastating force in a fight, it also makes him a ticking time bomb. His own allies have to be wary of him on the battlefield, knowing that their greatest weapon could turn on them at any moment. The entire tragedy of the Old Man Logan storyline is built on this very flaw, where Mysterio tricks Wolverine into a Berserker rage, causing him to slaughter his friends in the X-Mansion, believing they were villains. It's been suggested that this rage state is directly linked to his healing factor, supercharging it when he's at his most primal. This creates a terrifying feedback loop. The more he loses himself to rage, the faster he heals, which enables even more destruction. It's the ultimate double-edged sword, a power that comes at the cost of his soul. Number 4. Lack of self-knowledge and identity crisis. At number 4 is the flaw that has driven his character for decades, his fractured mind. Thanks to the trauma of the Weapon X program, and his own healing factor suppressing painful memories, Wolverine has spent most of his life as a man with no past. This perpetual identity crisis is a gaping wound in his psyche. His relentless, and often selfish, search for who he was has led him to abandon his duties and his found family over and over again. This isn't just a convenient plot device. It's a fundamental weakness. Enemies have repeatedly used his fragmented memories against him, implanting false information or manipulating him through ghosts of a past he can't even remember. His amnesia defines his constant struggle, making him perpetually haunted by the unknown. This lack of a solid identity means he can never truly be grounded, can't fully trust his own mind, and is always an easy target for those who would use his confusion against him. Number 3. Toxic masculinity and emotional repression. Our third biggest flaw is one that has become a lot more obvious with a modern lens. Wolverine as a symbol of toxic masculinity. For years, he was held up as the ideal strong, silent type. He's stoic, emotionally walled off, prone to explosive rage, and solves his problems with his fists. He almost never shows vulnerability or asks for emotional support, choosing instead to isolate himself and drink his pain away. When written without much nuance, these traits reinforce a pretty damaging stereotype of what it means to be a man. His inability to process his emotions in a healthy way is directly linked to his berserker rages and his habit of pushing away anyone who cares about him. While more recent stories have started to deconstruct this and explore his struggles, for decades he was portrayed as the ultimate alpha male. This emotional repression isn't a sign of strength. It's a crippling flaw that keeps him trapped in a cycle of violence and self-pity, unable to build healthy, lasting relationships. Number 2. The overpowered healing factor. Coming in at number 2 is a flaw that isn't really about the character, but the writing around him. His healing factor is just too powerful for its own good. Wolverine's ability to recover from almost any injury has become a kind of narrative plot armor, which can completely undermine the stakes of any story he's in. When the audience knows the hero is going to survive, no matter what, the tension just evaporates. Fights lose their consequence, and his struggles can feel less meaningful. This over-reliance on his healing factor has led to some repetitive storytelling, where the only way to challenge him is to find a convoluted way to temporarily turn off his powers. Critics and fans have long argued that this invulnerability has diluted his character, shrinking him from a complex man struggling with his mortality to a simple, unkillable action hero. The most compelling Wolverine stories, like the movie Logan or the Death of Wolverine comics, are the ones where this invincibility is taken away, forcing him to face his own mortality and proving that his greatest weakness as a character is, ironically, his lack of weakness. Number 1. Emotional instability and trauma. And the number 1 most critical flaw in Wolverine, the one that nearly all the others grow from, is his deep and unresolved trauma. His entire life has been a relentless series of horrific events: childhood tragedy, the traumatic awakening of his powers, the torture and brainwashing of Weapon X, and watching almost everyone he has ever loved die. These aren't just backstory. They are deep psychological scars that show up as crippling emotional volatility. Many psychological analyses of the character suggest he exhibits clear symptoms of PTSD, dissociative disorders, and severe emotional instability. This trauma is his true kryptonite. It's the engine for his berserker rages, his emotional repression, and his self-destructive behavior. It's the one wound that his healing factor can never, ever touch. This raw, unprocessed pain is what makes him so vulnerable to manipulation and is the root cause of his inability to find peace. It is this flaw that, paradoxically, also makes him one of Marvel's most human and relatable characters. Because beneath the claws and the adamantium is just a man who has endured more pain than anyone should ever have to bear, making his psychological damage the ultimate Wolverine problem. So, what do you think? Did we miss any crucial flaws? Or is there a weakness you think deserves to be number 1? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this look at Marvel's most complicated hero, be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell for more breakdowns of your favorite characters. Conclusion: ultimately, the Wolverine problem isn't that he's a flawed hero. It's that his flaws are his character. From his surprisingly simple physical weaknesses to the deep psychological wounds that drive his every move, Logan is a tapestry of broken pieces. His overpowered healing factor can make his stories feel weightless, but it's his deep-seated trauma that provides the gravity to make him so compelling. He's a walking paradox, a nearly unkillable man who is constantly dying on the inside. But maybe that's the whole point. Wolverine's enduring appeal isn't found in his indestructibility, but in his struggle. He shows us that true strength isn't about never falling down. It's about having the will to get back up, even when every fiber of your being is telling you to stay down.